That's not even the worst part. I tell people when they call me a sociopath for fabricating an STI diagnosis to terrify my boyfriend. They hear the headline and picture some cruel puppet master. But I was just a woman so desperate to be needed that I committed medical fraud in my own kitchen. The version everyone knows has Jake as the victim and me as the predator, but what they don't understand is how thoroughly I destroyed my own life in the process. I lost my best friend, my reputation, and any chance at the relationship I was trying to save. But here's what nobody's asking. I didn't just print a fake lab report. I manufactured an entire narrative, and the nurse he left me for had been watching me unravel for weeks. You need to understand how I got there. I was never the girl who believed in fairy tales, but Jake made me want to rewrite my own ending. We met at a friend's warehouse party last March, him standing by the keg in that stupid leather jacket that smelled like clove cigarettes and winter. I noticed how he listened when people talked, really listened, tilting his head like he was tuning into a secret frequency. For 6 months, I was the one he tuned into. Then his startup got funded and everything shifted. He'd come home at midnight smelling like expensive scotch and other people's ambition, his phone screen facing down on the nightstand like a locked vault. The first time I saw her name, it was a calendar notification on his laptop. 2 p.m. follow-up. Just that. No context. I was working from his apartment that Tuesday because my Wi-Fi was out, and there it was, glowing in his dock. When I asked, he said she was the nurse at the new corporate clinic his company used. Annual physical stuff, boring, he said, already scrolling through Slack. But his shoulders did this thing, this microscopic lift that told me he was lying about how boring it was. That's when I started feeling myself disappear. He'd kiss my forehead, but his eyes would be scanning the room. We'd have sex, but he'd finish and immediately check his phone. I became furniture, something he walked around without noticing. The panic started as a whisper in my ribs, then a scream. I wasn't losing him to another woman, I was evaporating while still breathing his air. Huz where I made the first cut. I waited until he was in the shower, his phone unlocked on the counter like an invitation. I scrolled back 3 weeks and found her number, not in contacts, but in recent calls. 3 calls, each exactly 17 minutes long. I screenshotted them, my hands shaking so hard the first image was just a blur. Then I deleted the screenshot from his photos and cleared his recently deleted. The digital footprint erased, but the acid of it was already in my blood. My best friend Rana noticed me flinching at every text notification. We were getting coffee and I dropped my phone twice. "You're acting like it's a grenade," she said, stirring her oat milk latte. I wanted to tell her I was already holding the pin, that I'd started researching chlamydia symptoms at 3 am, cross-referencing incubation periods and false positive rates. Instead I said, work stress. The lie came out smooth as butter. That's when I knew I was capable of worse. I paid some guy on Reddit $200 for a PDF template of lab results from a real clinic in Phoenix. I used my actual medical record number from a strep test last year to make it authentic. Changed the date, added the positive result, even faked the doctor's signature with a font I downloaded called Medical Script. I aged the paper in tea water and dried it with a hudra because Jake was detail-oriented. He'd notice crisp white paper that looked too new. The level of planning should have been my first clue I was crossing from desperate into dangerous. When I found the results in my bag, I made sure we were at his apartment, not mine. More witnesses to my vulnerability. I let my hands shake for real as I held the paper out. "I don't understand," I whispered, letting tears break my voice. "I've only been with you." The moment stretched between us like a wire pulled taut. His face went through 3 movements: shock, then fear, then this devastating softness. He pulled me to his chest and I could feel his heart hammering against my cheek. "We'll figure this out," he said. For the first time in weeks he was fully present, his phone forgotten on the couch, but I hadn't anticipated the logistics. Jake's brother worked in medical billing. When Jake called him for advice, Tyler asked what lab processed the test. The name I'd used, Pinnacle Diagnostics, was real, but they didn't work with my insurance. That discrepancy was a crack in the foundation. Tyler told Jake to get retested at the corporate clinic his company used. The same clinic where Chloe worked. I tried to suggest other places, but Jake was already on their patient portal, booking the earliest appointment. "Tuesday, 2 p.m., he said, showing me the confirmation. Chloe said she can expedite the results. The floor tilted beneath my feet. She remembered him. She'd already discussed this with him. While I was forging documents, they'd been talking about my fake crisis. I couldn't sleep that weekend. I kept refreshing Cla's Instagram, private, but her profile picture showed a girl with dark hair and a dimple in her left cheek. Jake had a type and I was looking at her. When I drove past the clinic on Monday during my lunch break, I saw his car in the lot. It was 12:47 p.m. He wasn't supposed to be there until Tuesday. The acid in my stomach became a live wire. The next morning, I followed him. Parked 3 spots down in the garage, watched him walk in at 1:55 p.m. I waited 47 minutes, scrolling through his recent calls. She'd texted him 3 times since Saturday. At 2:42 p.m., they emerged together. Not side by side, but close enough. She was touching his arm, her nurse's badge catching the light. He was nodding, serious. Then he smiled. I'd been dating Jake for 14 months, and I knew that smile. It was his problem-solving smile, the one he used when he'd figured out a bug in his code. He was solving her. Stayed in that parking garage until my phone died. When I got home, I created a fake email address, mudrakuds.com, and spent 3 hours composing a message about a system error that had resulted in false positives for several patients. I used technical language I'd copied from real HIPAA breach notifications. The email said my results had been invalidated and retesting was required. I sent it to Jake at 11:47 p.m., then deleted the account. The digital footprint erased again, but I was leaving traces everywhere else. On Wednesday, Jake called to say the clinic was investigating a potential breach. Cla says these things happen more than you'd think, he told me, his voice lighter than it had been in days. She's been really helpful navigating it. The way he said her name with that little lift at the end made me understand I'd built him a bridge straight to her. That night, Rana came over with Thai food and found me screenshotting Cla's LinkedIn profile. "That's the nurse?" she asked, looking over my shoulder. "Maya, what are you doing?" I closed my laptop too fast, cracking her finger in the hinge. She yelped and I apologized, but the moment had already curdled. "You're scaring me," she said, sucking her finger. "This isn't healthy." I told her she didn't understand what it was like to feel yourself becoming invisible. She left the pad Thai on the counter and walked out. I didn't call after her. But Friday, Jake was spending more time texting than sleeping. "Just coordinating the follow-up," he'd mumble when I asked, but I'd stopped asking. I was too busy driving past Cla's apartment building. I'd found her address through public records, a trick I'd learned from my HR job when verifying employment. Her lights were on until 2 a.m. some nights. I imagined her and Jake on the phone, solving my deception together, bonding over my collapse. Its breaking point came when Jake asked if I'd come to the follow-up appointment. "Cla says it's good for partners to be on the same page," he explained. I couldn't say no without looking suspicious. So there I was, sitting in that clinic waiting room, surrounded by beige walls and empathy posters, watching Cla walk toward us in coral scrubs. She had a purple stethoscope around her neck and a dimple that deepened when she smiled at Jake. "Good to see you again," she said to him, then turned to me. Her eyes held for 1 second too long. "Maya, right? Jake's told me so much about you." The way she said it, I knew she was lying. She hadn't heard anything about me until my body became a problem she could solve for him. On the exam room, she went through the standard questions. When she asked about my symptoms, I described them with surgical precision, the symptoms I'd memorized from WebMD. Dysuria, abnormal discharge, pelvic pain. She nodded, typing. "And you were monogamous?" she asked, her voice neutral as tap water. I said yes, holding Jake's hand, feeling his palm sweat against mine. She looked at our hands, then back at her screen. "We'll get this sorted," she said to him, always to him. That's when I knew I'd lost. Not because of the lie, but because I'd given him a reason to need her expertise. I'd made myself the problem that connected them. When the results came back negative, as they would, since I'd never had anything, Jake was relieved. But something had shifted. He was checking his phone differently now, that same problem-solving smile appearing when he thought I wasn't looking. I started showing up at his office with lunch unannounced. Once I saw him and Cla through the window of a coffee shop, sitting across from each other, laptops open. Colleagues, I told myself, just colleagues, but colleagues don't laugh like that. Colleagues don't lean across the table to wipe foam from each other's lip. Rana stopped answering my texts. When I called from a different number, she answered, then hung up as soon as she heard my voice. "You need help," she'd said before the click. The silence that followed was louder than any confrontation. Juk started working late. "The new health platform launch," he explained, but I'd seen Cla's Instagram story, now public, showing a whiteboard with his company's logo in the background. She'd captioned it, "Late nights with the best team." He wasn't in the photo, but I could see his leather jacket draped over a chair. Broke down at work. Someone in accounting asked why I was crying over the copier, and I said toner allergy. My boss, Karen, called me into her office. You've missed 3 deadlines, she said, sliding a performance review across her desk. The words needs improvement blurred through my tears. I saw her hesitate, then harden. Personal issues can't be personal forever. Tonight Jake finally ended it. We were at his apartment. He'd made pasta, something he only did when he had bad news. Chloe and I have been talking, he started, and I felt the floor dissolve. About the stress this has put on you, on us. She thinks we might need space. Chloe thinks, the phrase echoed in my skull, had already packed my things in a box by the door, 9 months of my life reduced to toiletries and a spare toothbrush. I think you should talk to someone, he said, handing me the box. A professional. I drove to Chloe's apartment, parked across the street, watched her windows. At 11:13 p.m., Jake's car pulled up. He didn't see me in the dark. I watched him walk to her door, watched her open it, watched them embrace, not a friendly hug but the kind that says I'm home. I didn't go home. I went to Runna's but she wouldn't answer. I slept in my car outside her building and in the morning a security guard tapped on my window. Ma'am, you've been here all night. I drove to work with the same clothes, the same makeup, the same shame. Karan fired me that afternoon. An anonymous concern was raised about your stability, she said. Given your recent performance, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. The thing about manufactured crises is they become real. My fake diagnosis had metastasized into actual termination, actual isolation, actual collapse. I was down to 114 pounds. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night in 6 weeks. I'd stopped answering my mother's calls because I couldn't explain why I'd lost my job without explaining everything else. Then came the final truth bomb. I'd been so focused on Chloe that I'd missed the real secret. Jake called me not to reconcile but to inform me. I'm seeing someone, he said. I wanted you to hear it from me. I asked who, though I already knew. Chloe, he confirmed. She got me through this whole mess. You know how stressful that was. This mess I'd created. The stress I'd manufactured. The relationship I'd built for them. Had told me they'd been careful, waited until he was sure about us being over. As if there was a noble way to fall in love with someone else's boyfriend while processing their fake medical trauma. He told me he hoped I was getting help. He told me I deserved to be happy. I hung up and drove to the clinic. Not to confront them, I'm not that far gone. But to sit in the parking garage and breathe the same air they breathed 5 days a week. To feel close to the life I'd accidentally created for them. I saw them leave together that evening, her hand in his back pocket, the way I used to walk with him. They were laughing about something. They looked light. They looked right. That's when the biggest shoe dropped. I'd been so focused on the how of their relationship that I'd missed the when. I scrolled back through my photos, back to the party where we'd met. In the background of a selfie I'd taken, there she was, Chloe, talking to Jake. 9 months before I ever forged a document, before I ever felt myself disappearing. She'd been there at the beginning, a ghost in the frame of our origin story. Wasn't losing him to the nurse. I'd been the placeholder while he found his way back to someone who'd been there all along. This aftermath was a quiet implosion. I moved back in with my mother in Tucson. She doesn't ask questions, just makes me soup and lets me sleep. Runna sent a single text, I hope you get the help you need. No, love you, no, call me when you're better. The finality of that period at the end of the sentence told me everything. I saw the engagement announcement through a mutual friend's Instagram. Close stories are public now, and mine is among the casualties. The ring is vintage, Art Deco. Jake would have researched it for weeks. The caption could not have got here without you. I know she means him, but I feel the phantom limb of that you. Without my desperation, without my lie, without the problem I created, they would have been just colleagues. I was the crisis that clarified their compatibility. My mother thinks I'm typing a novel when I'm at my laptop. Really, I'm documenting what I can remember, trying to trace the moment when need became manipulation. The therapist I've started seeing says I have an anxious preoccupied attachment style, which sounds like medical jargon for ruins relationships proactively. I got a job at a call center. No more HR, no more access to people's private information. I answer questions about printer warranties and try not to hear Jake's voice in the hold music. Some days I almost believe I'm getting better. But here's why I'm telling you this now. Yesterday, Club posted a story of their new house. It's in the neighborhood Jake and I used to walk through, the one where I'd point out which porches I'd want. In the background, on a bookshelf, I saw something that stopped my blood. My book. The one I'd left in his apartment, the one he'd said he'd return but never did. It was on their shelf, integrated into their life. She'd probably read it. They'd probably laughed about it. Everyone thinks I was a villain creating chaos. But I was a woman screaming into a void, and the echo came back as someone else's love story. I told Jake I had an STI because I wanted him to see me, to need me, to choose me. Instead, he chose the person who helped him navigate my collapse. So here's the question I can't answer, the one my therapist keeps asking: if I could take it all back, would I? Or would I rather have been invisible and kept him than honest and lost him to her anyway? Still check their profiles through a fake account I made. I tell myself it's to monitor my own recovery, see them, feel nothing, move on. But tonight, looking at their housewarming party photos, I felt it again. That acid in my ribs, the need to be seen. Mubba, that's the real disease. Not chlamydia, not obsession, but this bottomless hunger to matter. I gave Jake a crisis because it was the only thing that made me feel solid in his world. He got tested, he left. And she, the nurse, was there to catch him with her steady hands and her dimple and her perfect fucking timing. So tell me, am I the villain here or just the symptom of a larger disease? Because I still can't tell the difference. And I'm not sure I want to.